Okay, so we came into the 7th week of the process control, right? Basically, this is supposedly to be a tuition week, but like I mentioned to you, this week we don't have any assessment, but I would like to still continue to overview the materials so that we can finish by essentially at week 11. If we are taking T week, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 T, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, then the last material should be given on the week 11 basically. Okay. This week we just keep continuing, but there will be no lecture on Wednesday and Thursday because the lecture on tomorrow that will be taken by Miss Lai on the tutorial. Okay, and then the sessions on the, what is the sessions? I think I have one session. I think the tutorial session, if not wrong, that will be taken by the process control open-ended lab sessions for the 2 groups. Okay, and on Thursday there will be no more process modeling because we have covered everything that yesterday on the development of the distributed models. So from this point onward, it's going to be quite quick until the end of the semester. Okay, so we have talked about the feedback control like last week, and then the design of the feedback control system. This is an additional materials that goes into the feedback control. So this concept is building up on the feedback control. We look into more detail of how we apply the process control, especially on the control instrumentation and tuning. So at the end of this lecture, you should ideally be able to list different components required in the process control instrumentation to achieve effective feedback control operation. Explain the typical performance of feedback control system, where it can be an on-off, proportional, proportional integral, and proportional integral derivative. And then how you can tune your controller using simple rules of thumb, online trial and error, and Ziegler-Nichols method. All the materials that are given today is taken from the book of Professor Luyben, William Luyben, 1996, Process Modeling, Simulation and Control for Chemical Engineers. Okay, you will not be able to find these materials on the previous semester or previous year lecture because this is a new material that I give to you to give much more complete picture on the control, because I think it's not very good that you just have a minimal amount of the materials without being able to understand what is actually happening in the real system. So these are something that are new and is taken from the book of Prof. Luyben. Okay, so there are 3 parts of the control instrumentation: sensor, transmitter, controller, and the final control element. Sensors is important in that it will detect the process variables. Transmitter will convert the sensor signal into an equivalent signal. Okay, it can be an air pressure signal if you have a pneumatic system. So in the old days, we use a pneumatic system where everything is relying on the pressure. So all the valves that you have in your plant that will be operated using a pressure that comes from a pressure. You have an air pressure system that will open all the valve when it operates. Okay, or you can have a current signal in analog electronic system. So probably in the newer systems, then you will have this current signal using electronic system. The controller will then compare the process signal with the desired set point value and produces an appropriate controller output signal. The final control element then changes the manipulated variables. These 4 are what we're gonna get through today's lecture. Okay, basically all of this. We're gonna discuss sensor, transmitter, control valve, analog and digital controller, and computing and logic devices. There are many types of the sensors that are available. The main one is the flow rate, temperature, pressure level. If we want to control the reactions or The product quality, we gonna have to go with the pH sensor, the density sensor, sometimes the viscosity or infrared UV absorption. This will be the easiest way if you want to go with the concentration rather than using a gas chromatography. Or in some cases, we can also use the refractive index. For example, I remember in your thermodynamic experiment, you are using this refractive index to check the concentrations of your product, right? If not wrong. We have this type of two different sensors in here, the flow and the temperature. So for flow, orifice plates are the one that people has been widely used. Hi, good afternoon, James. Where normally the pressure drop is used as a measurement of the flow. Okay, and these are not just the orifice plate, but it can also be a turbinemeter, sonic flow meter, magnetic flow meter, rotameter, vortex shading devices, and pitot tubes. For temperature, then normally we use a thermocouple. A thermocouple works on the basis of the two different wires is put into a different temperature. So the difference in the temperature will create a signal, and that signal will be a function of the difference in the temperature between these two wires. Then you can also use a field bulb temperature sensor and also a resistance thermometers. For pressure and differential pressure, then you can use something like a Bourdon tubes, diaphragms. Okay, for the liquid level, you can use several ways. Like in here, we show you 3 ways. Like if you remember, you open your bedroom toilet, you open it, then you have that kind of float, where basically if the water already reaching a certain level, that float will go up, then it will stop the water to come into your container, into the container of the bedroom toilet. That was used when I think we come up with the old toilets, then we normally use that float. Okay, or you can use a displacement meter. Otherwise, you can also measure the difference in the static pressure between the two different elevations. Okay, one in the vapor above the liquid and the other one under the liquid surface. Why we bother to go all these things? It's very important to trigger your curiosity. You need to later go back, and when you become a process engineer, you will notice closely that how does this level is detected, how this temperature is detected, how the pressure and differential pressures are detected. Okay, so this is quite important. So after the sensors, and the next one is the transmitter. So the transmitter in here is basically converting the sensor signal, for example, millivolts mechanical movement, mechanical movement, pressure differential into a control signal. This is what happened in here. Okay, first you get this temperature, the thermocouple. The thermocouple will give a signal, and then this transmitter will convert it into a 4 until 20 milliampere output signal in here. Okay, so thermocouple input signal will be converted into a current output that between 4 until 20 milliampere. As the process temperature varies from 50 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So in essence, this transmitter will convert the temperature signal into a current signal. So these are the transmitter. Then we have 2 types of the control valve. Okay, so it's very important that you understand these things, because later on when you try to make a control systems, you will have to deal with this one. Okay, valves are designed to either fail in the wide open position or completely shut, depending on the manipulated variable of the system. So you want to design something to be fail shut, meaning that the valve should be cut off. It should be closed. So if the pressure is no more, then that valve should be closed. This will be the case if you are handling a steam or fuel. Why? Because in the case that you have an electrical in the case where the electrical power is failed, basically when you have that shutdown of everything, you don't want your steam to keep on coming into your systems, because that will provide the heat. That will be dangerous, meaning that if your temperature is increasing or you keep on heating into the systems, then something terrible may be happening, that it may trigger the reactors to keep on sustaining, and then there will be a rundown. So that's why if something is related with the steam or the fuel, it will be designed such that in the fail situation, when there is no pressure into the system, then that valve will be shut, such that the steam or valve will not go into your system. On the other hand, you have another valve which is designed to widely open in the case where there is an electrical trip, or when the power is no more there. For example, this will be the cooling water to a reactor, or for example, there will be a pressure safety pressure system. So if the pressure is above a certain pressure, then that will be wide open. So cooling water has to be provided, because if the cooling system is important for you to make sure that the temperature of the reactor is below its maximum temperature. Therefore, when the electrical power is no more, then whatever the valve that is related with the cooling water should be fully open. So meaning that when you have a power, that valve will be closed. But when there is no power, then that valve will be fully open to make sure that the cooling water will go into the system in case there is an electrical trip or electrical meaning that there is no electricity that comes into your plant. Okay. So how did you size your flow rate through the valve? And you go with this equation. The design equation for the liquid is this one, where the flow rate comes with as a function of the CV, and then this one is the fraction of the total flow area of the valve plus square of the pressure drop of the valve divided by the specific gravity relative to water. So these are one of the most common equations that people use to size the flow rate through your control valve. In these slides, we are discussing about the difference between the analog and the digital controllers. So the analog controllers will use the continuous electronic or pneumatic signals. Okay. So these controllers see transmitter signal continuously, and control valve will be changed continuously. Digital computer, however, are discontinuous in operation, looking at number of loops sequentially. So one is continuous, the other one is discrete. Okay, I will not go and talk about these things in more detail, but later you can Google and check what is the difference between the analog and the digital. But there should be a conversion if you are converting from the analog operations, or you're converting from analog signal to the digital signal. And we have three basic types of the controllers used for the continuous feedback control, which is the proportional action, integral action, and derivative action. Of course, this integral action will normally be coupled with the proportional, such that in actual applications we only have a proportional integral, and proportional integral derivative. So let's go and look at the proportional action. I have a question from one of you on why the project 1 MATLAB code, the controller output has something that looks like this equation 1. Okay, so this CO is basically a controller output. Okay, a controller output is equal to the bias plus minus Kc multiplied by SP minus PM. So this SP refers to the set point, PM is the process measurement signal. Okay, so this bias in here is a constant, and it corresponds to the value of the controller output when there is no error. So this will come will become more clear later on, because this one is related with your transmitter range of the signal. It's probably not very clear at this particular point, but if you go and look into your MATLAB 1 code in project 1, you will be able to derive this value of the bias. Okay, Kc in here is the controller gain. So the larger the gain, the more controller output will change for a given error. This Kc in here can also be substituted with the thing that we call the proportional band. PB in here have an inverse relationship with the Kc. So it is defined as 100 divided by the Kc. Therefore, the wider the proportional band, if this one is higher, then this one will be lower because it has an inverse relationship, right? And if this one is higher, then this will be smaller. Okay, so that they have an inverse relationship basically. Now, the gain on the controller can be made positive or negative by setting a switch in an analog controller or specifying the desired sign in a digital controller. So the sign in here, plus or minus in here. This is something that depends on the relationship between the manipulated variables with the controller action. Okay, if we have a positive gain, then this will result in the controller output decreasing when the process measurement increases. So this decrease action is called a reverse acting controller. Okay, a negative gain on the other hand will result in the controller output increasing when the process measurement increases. This increase action is called a direct acting controller. It's probably a bit difficult for you to digest in here, but you need to go and back into the equation 1 and think carefully in terms of these two relationship. Okay, so the correct sign depends on the action of the transmitter, which is usually direct, and then the action of the valve, which is air to open or air to close, and the effect of the manipulated variable on the controller variables. So when you design the control system, this kind of the detailed thing is something that you will need to understand. Okay, so these things probably will not be evaluated in your test too, but this is something that is very practical that you need to understand in order for you to be able to design a control structure. So people like my students or the collaborator professor that I have in Taiwan University, they will understand these things very much. Okay, because this is applicable in the real situations when you start looking at the control structure for a unit operation. So these are the case, for example. Okay, we are talking about the heat exchanger. So in here, for example, we are controlling the outlet temperature of a heat exchanger. So whatever in here, the hot oil on the exit is, the temperature is being transmitted to here. Okay, then you have a controller output in here. The valve in here is air to open. Why? Because in case there is an electrical shutdown, like if suddenly the plant is shut down, then you want to make sure that there is no steam into the system. Because if this one is designed air to close, meaning you need to have a steam, you need to have an air pressure to close the steam supply, but we want to make sure that the safety is the number one priority. So you want to make sure that in order for you to have the system to be safe, then there should be no hot steam provided into the systems at the conditions where there is no electrical supply or when there is no pressure put into your into the plant. Okay, so in this case it has to be fail shut, right? So that's why we are using the air to open control valve should be chosen. Okay, everybody get it up to this point. So this is very something that is that you need to understand. If it is something like a steam or fuel, you have to design your control valve to be fail shut. Okay, if it is something that is like a cooling water or a coolant into your system, it should be designed to be fail open. This is very basic. All chemical engineers need to know. I did not teach you process control just to get only to give you the concept, but it's very important for me to teach you process control, so that in the future when you pass my unit, you will also understand in reality that how the control systems are working. So later on in your process plan design, when you go with your design of the plan, including the control structure, you need to bear in mind something like this. Okay, so we will now go into the temperature transmitter. So it is the direct acting. Remember, when the process temperature goes up, so when the temperature in here goes up, the transmitter signal in here, the controller output, the PM in here goes up. Okay, because as the temperature goes up, then the signal will go up. The relationship in here is proportional in here. The PM will goes up. However, when this process measurements goes up, you want to have less steam to go into the system, because when the temperature goes up, meaning you need to reduce the heating into the system. Okay, so that this controller output has an inverse relationship with this PM. So if the process measurement increases, your controller output has to decrease. Okay, because this valve is air to open. Therefore, the controller must be reverse acting and have a positive gain. So this one goes back again to here. This is reverse acting, meaning this is a positive gain. So if this is a positive gain, your sign in here should be positive. Guys, I hope you understand these things. This is very important. Then later, for example, one of you will ask me, Jaka, why in Luyben's code the KC is positive, and why is it not negative in here? So this is the logic, guys. This is the logic. Okay, you have to go and inspect the system. You need to know what is the valve. Is it air to open, air to close? That is very important. Okay, so we go and inspect into another thing. This is a distillation column. So as an example, we'd like to control the base level in here with the bottom's product flow rate. Okay, so if the level goes up, right, meaning we have to increase the bottom product flow rate in here. But the valve has to be air to open, because you don't want to put in more heat when there is an emergency situation, when the electrical and the pressure fail totally. It's just closed, there is no electricity, there is no pressure, then this heat should be stopped. Okay, so the level transmitter signal increases if the level increases, basically. However, if the level goes up, we want the bottom flow rate to increase. So therefore, you have a relationship between the PM, and the PM is the process measurement, and the controller output that increase. So this means this is have a direct acting and have a negative gain. So if you go back into here, you have this negative gain, direct acting controller, and this will have, what do you call these things, negative gain. So this has to be negative. This KC will have a negative sign. Okay. Everybody make it clear up to this point? I go a bit slow in here because this is important for you to understand later on. It looks easy, but later if you go into, for example, after you go into the tutorial for designing the Aspen Plus dynamic system, which I think you are a bit lucky because I don't, you choose to have that laboratory project instead of Aspen Plus Dynamics, but probably I probably will not teach the process control for next year, so your junior probably will be lucky. But if I am the init convener for process control for next year, I will apply the project 2 and the Aspen Plus Dynamics to simulate the control system. Because I think I have a duty to educate you how to simulate the process, the control structure, so that in the future, let's say if you become a process engineer in the real field, then you will be able to understand. And these things are the things that are very important. So those of you, I know that mark is very important as well, right? You want to aim for the high mark, but this understanding is more important in the real situation. So when you go into the industry, this is the thing that you need to deal with. So let's say if you simulate the control structure, if you don't get this relationship correct in your particular control loop, you will not be able to simulate that thing correctly in the Aspen Plus Dynamics or the MATLAB. Okay, so we go into the next one. After you understand these things, then we go into the integral action. These are the controller output from the integral actions. Okay, you have a bias plus these things in here. Okay, I think you can go and read these things, but the main thing in here is that it integrates the error with respect to time. So imagine if you have the plot of the error versus the time, then this will correspond to the area under the error with time. Okay, then you multiply by 1 divided by the reset time. So the integral action basically drive the process back to its set point. Okay, because so in integral action, basically we will not have an offset. So the steady state, the old steady state will be the same with the new steady state. The problem with the integral action is that it degrades the dynamic of the control system, dynamic performance. So it makes the control loop more oscillatory, like what we showed in the previous slide. However, integral action is a must if you want to achieve zero offset. Okay, the derivative action, however, is to anticipate when the process is heading by looking at the time rate of change of the control variable. So this will improve the dynamic response. However, in some loops where you have a noisy signal, then this is not going to be a practical if you are adding a derivative action. So this chart in here gives you a good view of how much of the amount, the relative amount of the 3 different controllers used in the real commercial controllers in industry. So P is 20%, mostly are the PI 60%, and the PID are 20%. In your MATLAB project 1, we are basically using the proportional integral. Okay, because this will allow you to achieve a zero offset. So apart from the basic control loops, generally all the processes will have the instrumentation, such as a sound alarm, to notify if you have a unsafe condition. Then you will have instrumentation that will shut down the process if there is unsafe conditions or if equipment fails. Okay, so if, for example, you have a compressor motor overload and electrical control system on the motor shuts down the motor, the rest of the process will normally be shut down immediately, because the compressor is the one that drives the pressure, and if all your control valve operates based on the pressure, then it has to be, you have to have a system that override the whole systems to make sure that if you lose the whole power, then everything will be shut down. Okay, these are the load performance. Okay, where you have, for example, the simple heat exchanger process. The process outlet temperature T is controlled by manipulating the steam flow rate. The oil flow rate F and the inlet oil temperature are the log disturbances. Okay, what you are putting in here is the temperature transmitter from the hot oil exit. The set point signal is the SP. The output control signal CO from the temperature control goes through a transducer, and the valve in here is air to open because we want it to be velcros. This is the same like what we showed earlier, but the difference is that in here I think we are using a cool oil, I think. Okay. Besides all these things that we discussed, we also have a basic control. It's called an on-off control. Okay, on-off is basically something that that shift between 0 and its maximum value, 0 or maximum value. The on-off controller in here is basically a proportional control with a very high gain. This controller is normally used very rarely because of the cycling nature of the response and then the surging flow, and it will make the wear and tear on the control valve very dominant. These are the example, for example, that we use the heat exchanger example. Okay, when a lot disturbance in inlet temperature occurs, then what you have essentially in here is the period in here and the average value of the control variables in the T change. The system is very unstable in the classical linear sense. Normally, you bound the nonlinear bounds or constraint on the manipulated variables to keep it in the limit cycle. The proportional controller in here is same like what I have discussed earlier. It's mostly used for the liquid level controller in most of the cases, because for the liquid level tank, the thing that are important is not to maintain zero offset, but rather to make sure that the tank will not dry or overflow. And for another reason as well, if you are putting in a PI controller into a series of tank, then there will be a magnifications of the effect when you try to rectify the error. So whatever that has been coming from the response that comes from the first tank due to the PI controller will come into the second one and then will come into the third one. So there is a magnification of the effect. It's a bit different scenario with the snowball effect, because snowball effect we have the recycling effect, but essentially if you put in a PI controller to adjust the level of your liquid level tank in series, then there may be a scenarios that makes your system becomes unstable. Okay, for that thing, I think you can find it in one of the Professor Lieben's paper or his other process control book. These are the proportional controller for the heat exchanger example. Okay, so in case you have this kind of step change, it basically goes down. Then this will be what the response will be look like. Okay, if you put in a high gain of the low gain, you will definitely have an offset. And then what is this? This is the flow rate is the manipulated variables that you change to make sure that your temperature of the control variables will be controlled, so the deviations will be as small as possible. This is the typical response of the proportional integral controller. So if you have a step change, in this case, it's the temperature that goes in becomes lower. Okay, this is what you have. If you keep the value of the proportional gain at the same value, then if this is what you have, if you have a low value of the reset time, this is the value if you have a high reset time. Okay, and then this is what basically the response in terms of the manipulated variables will look like. Okay, then we go up again. This one is the proportional integral derivative controller in the example of the heat exchanger. If you have another step change in these things, is the reduction in your temperature, in the inlet temperature. This is what you have, and it's basically showing that there is an effect of the noise as well in here. Okay, I think you can go back into the details of this by yourself. I just keep on continuing. There are 3 rules of thumb for the control tuning. The common types of control loops are level, flow, temperature, and controller. The type of the controller and setting used for any one type are sometimes pretty much the same from one applications to another. Okay, so as an example, flow control normally is a PI with wide proportional band and fast integral action. When you have a wide proportional gain, meaning that you have a low proportional gain, okay? Because the band with the gain, they have an inverse relationship like what we showed earlier. These are the some of the rule thumbs for the flow loops. Okay, normally we use a PI, a wide proportional band is about 150 or low gain. A low value of integral or reset time about 0.1 minute per repeat. And the dynamic of the flow loop is normally very fast. Okay, the control valve dynamics are the slowest element in the loop. Thus a small reset time can be used. An exception of the fast PI control is this one, flow control of condensate throttle reboilers. This essentially will be useful later on when you go into your process plan design. So your senior who is doing the control design in your PPD2, then you need to go back into this slide again to design your system. So if later your examiner asks you, Jason, why are you using this value? Then you can go back, refer back into this rule of thumbs. The level loops is like this, basically. It represents the level is unimportant, so it's just maintained at set point, and then you're using a proportional controller. Okay, the exceptions of the proportional controller is the reactor, where the residence time is important. Why? Because your residence times is equal to your conversion and the yield of your product. So it's basically corresponds to your product specification, especially if you are using a continuous stir tank reactor like what we discussed in the other example on the plant-wide process control, right? I think that one is about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So these are exception for this one is only if you are using a reactor, because your liquid level will be tightly connected with your reaction performance. These are the comparisons that if you use a P controller or a PI controller for the level loops. The problem that you have is this one. Like I said, if you put in a PI controller in series for the liquid level in series, then you will have an amplification of the flow rate changes. This is dangerous, especially because the small disturbance will lead to the large fluctuation and will be amplified if you have a series of units. A chemical engineer is important for you to understand the snowball effect and this effect of these things in here. Because if you just graduate with the high marks, but you don't understand this, then this will be a disaster. This will have a disaster effect later when you really do the design. So the snowball effect is very important. And then also, you never put a proportional integral controller to a liquid level tank in series. Okay, so later if you go and then you go and talk, I passed the process control lecture from Jaka, who was your lecturer, and then you apply this kind of a wrong design, then then I will get into trouble. Okay, guys. So it's very important these things for you to understand. I'm teaching. This is from the ethical point of view. I'm not teaching you only to give you the high marks, but I'm teaching you to prepare you for industry as well. Okay, so something like this is something that is very important. Not just giving you all the theory and then evaluate you based on the theory, because later on when you go to industry, your mark, when you go to industry, of course, they will select you. Okay, so they don't want to have a graduate that that have a poor mark to go into work into industry, but after you go and work into the industry, that mark itself is not really something that is significant for you to do your job as an engineer, but rather your logic, how you work with people, and then also some of these basic rules that you know that is given in your lecture, and something like with the simulation tool, for example, that able for you to able to decide in your decision making. Okay, so the pressure loop in here is vary from the very tight fast loops. So why this is fast? Because you can reduce the pressure by simply opening the valve in here, but the dynamic of the process in here will be slower because you need to put in a cooling water, then there will be a process of the heat transfer in here that basically will cool down the vapor in here. Okay, so the dynamic in here will be slower than the dynamic process that you have in here. Basically, it's very important because depending on the nature of the dynamic on the nature of the pressure loops that you have in here, then you may have to design a different type of the control loop, or you will come up with a different time constant for your transfer function in here, because you go back into your first order plus dynamic FOPDT, first order plus that time. Okay, it's very important in here that you understand how you apply the control systems into your different loops. The temperature loops are usually quite slow because of the heat transfer process. Okay, therefore, in most cases they use a PID controllers. How do we do a controller tuning? You can do it with online trial and error. Okay, this is what you do. You basically set the reset time into the maximum, the derivative time into the minimum. You set the proportional band at a high value. Put the controller into the automatic, make a small set point or load change. Okay, reduce the proportional band by a factor of 2. So basically you are increasing the gain in stepwise. Okay, then you keep reducing back off on a PB to twice this ultimate value, and you check where until you keep on reducing the PB until the loop becomes very underdamped and oscillatory. So when you achieve that oscillatory behavior, that's what you call the ultimate gain. So I think I think some of the groups here go into the asking themselves into, sir, how do I get the K and the K for my MATLAB project 1 code? So that basically come from the Ziegler-Nichols, or it come from the Louis Bentiro's tuning, where they basically calculate using the ultimate gain. Okay, then if you continue using the back off on the PB to twice this ultimate value, then after you get these things, then you start bringing in the integral action by reducing TI, and continue again in here. I will not go into these things in details, but you can read by yourself. Okay, so once you get that value of the KU, this is what is the value that is recommended by the Ziegler-Nichols method. So if you are using only a proportional controller, your KC will be KU divided by 2. If you are using a PI, you want to use a slightly lower KC, and then you can use this TL, which is the PU periodic, the period between that oscillation, basically between the wave, the oscillations. That is a PU. If you are using a PID, this is the value that is recommended depending on the Ziegler-Nichols. The Ziegler-Nichols is actually not a chemical engineers. Those people are mostly working on the control theory. So they are either an electrical engineers, but they come up with this Ziegler-Nichols tuning method. Okay, I think I have been lost in my derivation. I have been telling you a lot of things. I will not go. The other control tuning, I think I covered it in the previous slides. Okay, you guys want to go back into that thing again. But what I'm trying to cover today is something that is very important for you to understand in terms of the process control. So we have go into the detail of how the controller output is defined in terms of the relationship between your transmitter and the control valve. Okay, and then we show you how to determine the value of the KC, and then whether it is positive or negative, and then whether it is positive gain or whether it is a reverse acting controller or direct acting controller. We discussed the examples of which one you should choose. If it is something related with the steam or fuel, then you want it to be shut. If it is a cooling water, then you want it to be open. Okay, guys. This probably will not come out in your test too, but regardless, I want to iterate these things because of my responsibility as an educator to give you practical things on the process control. Okay. So far, any questions that you want to ask me? Clarence, James, Jason, Michael, Taha, Selena, Tiffany, Yusi, Wong Yo. Anything that you want to ask from this slide? Is there, or there are no questions because these things are too practical, not on the theory, not on the mathematical derivation. Actually, something like this is much more important than just the concept or the derivation of the equation, because if you are able to develop the model, but if you want to embed that model into the PID into your MATLAB code, if you don't understand how this one is working, then you would not be able to simulate that thing into your MATLAB code again. So this actually is something that are important and to simulate your system. Guys, any questions, or I'm just talking by myself the whole 40 minutes with the excitement of giving you something that probably will be of use if you will apply this process control later in your 4th year or when you want to design a control systems. Huh? No questions at all? I thought I already go into that advanced control lecture. You see, is it, have I not go into that advanced control lecture? Not yet. Not yet. I probably skipped that thing already. Basically, if I skip that thing, then I will suggest you to go and read it by yourself. But I don't think that those advanced control lecture will be. I don't think that advanced control lecture will be covered lah. I don't think that will be covered because I'm a bit mixed up. You see, I'm teaching 2 units, so sometimes I feel a bit confused which one I have covered, which one I covered. Normally I'm teaching only a process modeling, so sometimes I'm a bit mixed. So if I have extra time, I will try to cover that thing, or otherwise I will leave it to Dr. Vignesh to cover that advanced control. That advanced control is quite important if you are not able to get a satisfactory control performance using a feedback control system. So basically what we will discuss on that thing is the valve pressure control, something like that. But I think if I keep on giving that thing by today, if I try to fit in every materials by today, that will not be effective for you. So and thank you for pointing out that thing. Okay, so I will probably ask Dr. Vignesh to find a time to give it to you starting next week. So in the remaining process controls lecture, that will be handled by Vignesh, by Dr. Vignesh. Okay, I think Dr. Vignesh have a very good student feedback. Probably much better. I think probably Jaka is more boring in this regard. Like I keep on giving you just the derivations on the theory and then just keep on talking about this kind of thing. So it's probably will be more fresh for you to get lecture with Dr. Vignesh. To be honest, teaching 2 units is a bit tiring as well. Actually, I find it a bit tiring, and this is the first time that I'm teaching 2 units and becoming the unit convener for 2 units. Normally I'm only taking the process control and process modeling and transfer phenomena. Okay, is it acceptable to you? You see, if Dr. Vignesh will teach, will cover the advanced control structure for you guys. Huh? Is it okay? Okay, if there is no questions, I guess I hope you guys get something from this from this lecture on the practical side of that. Okay, and you are free to contact me anytime. To contact me at any time. Okay, even though I'm not giving you the process modeling, probably I will still be there with you, but probably it will be once a week, because I try not to overload you with too many materials as well for the process modeling. Okay, I stop my recording in here, guys.